Okay, we all know the graham cracker, right? It's the cornerstone of a s'more, a classic childhood snack. But what if I told you that behind that sweet, simple cracker is a history that is just bizarre? Seriously, it's one of the strangest origin stories in all of food history.
Because here's the wild truth. The humble graham cracker wasn't created for us to enjoy. It was invented as a weapon. A weapon in a one-man war to suppress human desire itself.
And the general in that war? A Presbyterian minister by the name of Sylvester Graham. To really get what this cracker is all about, you first have to understand the man and his mission.
So picture this. It's the early 1800s. Graham looks around at America and he is not impressed. He sees a country just spiraling out of control, convinced that things like rich food and alcohol are fanning the flames of our worst impulses, leading everyone down a path of total moral decay.
And boy, was he specific about his targets. He was against booze, obviously, but he was also against flavorful food, which he thought overstimulated everybody. He even preached that married couples should only have sex once a month to avoid, getting carried away. But his biggest enemy, the thing he was truly obsessed with, was what he called the solitary vice.
Right, so let's not beat around the bush here. Self-abuse was just the 19th century code word for masturbation. And to Sylvester Graham, this wasn't just some minor sin. Oh no, this was a full-blown public health crisis that was physically destroying an entire generation. And the list of problems he blamed on it was just wild. He claimed it could literally inflame your brain, completely drain your body of energy, cause nervous disorders, and even stunt your growth. So in his mind, he wasn't just a preacher talking about diet. He was trying to save America from itself.
So, what was his grand solution? His primary weapon in this moral war wasn't a fire and brimstone sermon. It was a diet of the most extreme, intentional blandness you can possibly imagine.
His logic was actually pretty simple if you follow his train of thought. If exciting, flavorful food gets the passions all stirred up, then boring, flavorless food must calm them down, right? So he pushed for this simple vegetarian diet specifically to, in his words, temper overactive sexual appetites. So he basically drew a line in the sand food-wise. Over here you've got the good stuff, whole grains, plain vegetables. And over there you've got the foods of vice, rich meats, and especially what he called pleasure-inciting spices and sweeteners. For Graham, if it tasted too good, it was probably bad for your soul.
And this brings us to his signature invention, graham bread, the direct ancestor of our cracker. I mean, just look at this recipe. It's the definition of boring. Coarse flour, water, yeast, maybe a tiny pinch of salt, and that's it. No sugar, no spices, absolutely nothing that might accidentally bring you a moment of joy.
So, how did America feel about this prescription for a passion-free life? Well, as you can probably guess, Graham was what we'd today call a polarizing figure. You either loved him or you hated him.
Now, he was pretty savvy. He didn't just frame this as a moral crusade. He tried to package it as cutting-edge science. He positioned himself as a health expert, gave lectures, wrote books. He even made the wild claim that his diet could help people survive deadly cholera epidemics. But a lot of people just were not buying it. The press had an absolute field day with him. One reporter gave him the nickname the philosopher of sawdust pudding, which, you got to admit, is pretty good. It perfectly captures what people thought of his food.
And the reviews were just brutal. Another critic said his diet was nothing but swill, starch, slosh, and dishwater. Angry bakers who made the delicious spiced and sweetened breads he was rallying against would actually show up and protest his talks.
But here's the thing, you can't just write him off as a total crackpot. His message about health and self-control actually struck a chord with some people. He developed this passionate following of disciples called Grahamites. And his ideas would go on to inspire some huge names in the health food movement, like James Jackson and, yep, you guessed it, John Harvey Kellogg and cereal fame.
And this is where the story takes the most amazing, ironic twist. Because after Graham died, his little invention started to change in ways that would have absolutely horrified him, a path that leads directly to the s'more.
So let's follow the journey. First, Graham makes his boring bread. Then his followers, like Jackson and Kellogg, use his flour to make their own bland health foods. But then, and this is the critical moment, in the early 1900s, the National Biscuit Company, Nabisco, gets their hands on the recipe.
And they completely flip the script. I mean, look at this. The coarse, virtuous flour gets swapped for lighter, refined flours.
And most importantly, they add the one thing Graham hated most, those stimulating sweeteners. The goal wasn't moral restraint anymore, it was taste and mass appeal.
This whole transformation comes to a head in one single pivotal year for the cracker, 1927.
Because in 1927, the Girl Scouts publish a recipe that seals the cracker's fate forever. They take Nabisco's new, sweet cracker, they add a piece of chocolate and a toasted marshmallow, 2 more sugary, decadent no-nos, and they call this masterpiece Some Mores, because you're always going to want some more.
This new dessert wasn't just a slight change from Graham's original idea. It was its complete and total antithesis.
I mean, think about it. The s'more isn't just a yummy campfire treat. It is the absolute ultimate opposite of everything Sylvester Graham ever stood for. It's a sugary monument to pleasure and indulgence, the very things he dedicated his life to destroying.
You just couldn't write a more perfect, more poetic, historical irony. The food that was specifically designed to stop pleasure became the literal foundation for a dessert that is pure pleasure.
So I'll leave you with this question. The next time you're sitting around a campfire getting that marshmallow perfectly gooey and squishing it between 2 graham crackers, what are you going to see? Is it just a snack, or is it the delicious, sugary ruins of one man's very strange and very failed moral experiment?